What a beautiful morning it is today. But I guess every morning is a beautiful morning here. You should try living in Manchester. I'm Mike Blake-Crawford. I am the strategy director at Social Chain. Social Chain, for those who don't know, we're a global social media agency based in Manchester, but we've got offices all around the world in New York, Berlin, Munich, and London. And we work with some fantastic clients ranging from Adidas through to Amazon, ASOS and Coca-Cola as mentioned. And as a result, we get a lot of press. And a lot of that press focuses on the age of the business, only 5 years old, but also the age of the staff. As the Times has pointed out here, we've got an average age of just 21 years old, which might seem quite strange with me on stage. But when you see the guys back at the office, it begins to make sense how that's maintained, law of averages and all that. And I'm here today to say that BAU is dead, right? We're going to stick the knife in and we're going to kill it. Also going to say long live the king. Who or what is the king, I hear you ask? Well, it's certainly not me. Coming from the UK, it's probably not going to be him. It should have been this guy, but just like Bran, the end of Game of Thrones was broken. Yep, glad to get that off my chest. But anyway, to answer the question, I've seen a few heads mutter this. What exactly is BAU? Well, BAU, it stands for business as usual, aka all year round, aka always on. And what it is, it's a delivery for social media content, which looks somewhat like this. So anybody that works in social media will have seen one of these tables at some point in their career, which basically says that you can only post a minimum of 3 times per week on Facebook, and you need to post a maximum of 10 times per week on Instagram. I don't know what happens if you post 11 times. Maybe the whole sky falls in and Instagram crashes, something like that. But basically, this comes from theory. It's just a theory, and it comes from something called always-on marketing theory. So it's actually in the textbooks. And when you look in the textbooks, it looks something like this. And what it says is that we've transitioned from campaign-based marketing to always-on marketing. And campaign-based marketing, that was traditional marketing. So, you might have your television ads, you might have out-of-home, you might have a celebrity endorsement within that campaign, and you can go really, really big, loads of media spend, make loads of noise. But then in year 2, you may have a smaller campaign. So you might just repeat the previous campaign from the year before. You might do something a little bit smaller, cut the TV, just have some out-of-home and some digital. In year 3, you go big again with another big celebrity endorsement. But with always-on marketing, I always get a bit suspicious when I see charts like this where everything increases, but apparently because social media is 24/7, you can just keep communicating with your audience all day long, and apparently everything just increases. So product interest has increased, advocacy base, which is in dark green, has increased. Furthermore, you could even still do your campaign and have no negligible effects. It looks too good to be true, but it's just a theory. And who better to speak about theories and to introduce theories than this guy, Albert Einstein. So he's had a few theories in his time. In 1917, one of those theories was the theory of the static and stationary universe. And what Albert Einstein said was that the universe, it was fixed and it was eternal, and it had been that way since the dawn of time. And it wasn't until 1929 that Edward Hubble, with his telescope, actually discovered that the universe was in motion. It was moving, it was expanding. This was when he discovered redshift. Well, Albert Einstein was wrong. It was actually known as Einstein's biggest blunder. But it's not the only theory to have been disproven in recent years. Steven Spielberg and Hollywood did make you think that dinosaurs look somewhat like this, but recent science has actually uncovered that 95% of dinosaurs had feathers. So T-Rex probably looked less like this and more like this. Slightly less menacing and somewhat ridiculous. In classical Greece, people used to say that the earth was flat. Insane. Fast forward to 2019, and people still think the earth is flat. But anyway, you get the idea. Theories are just theories. Well, listen, I've got a theory, and to prove this theory, I'm going to ask everybody to stand up. That's right. Sorry, guys. You will get a chance to sit down, I hope. Let's see. It just depends on how this goes. I've got a few things I just want to ask, just to get everybody engaged and everybody thinking about this and prove this theory that I have got. So the first thing I'm going to ask is to sit down if you don't consider yourself a millennial. It's a few people. Why don't you consider yourself a millennial? Okay, so it's an age thing. It's an age thing. I think it's really interesting how, as marketers, we still market by these age groups, 18 to 24, 24 to 35. I mean, I'm 33, so I've got 2 years to move out of that 18 to 34 demographic. And I do wonder if on my 35th birthday, will I wake up and suddenly start liking different brands and have different affinities. According to the textbooks, that's what will happen, so I look forward to that moment. The next one, sit down if you don't have a Facebook account. Someone sat down. This is a social media conference, by the way, so you should probably leave as well. Okay, the next one is, we'll see about this one. Okay, so sit down if Facebook or Instagram were not the first apps that you opened when you woke up this morning. That's more like it. This is a social media conference. This is right. This is what I expected to see. Okay, so you guys, you're the social media addicts, right? You can't cope without one last scroll of your feed and one more story before you go to bed, one more like, one more comment. Sit down if you don't remember the last 5 pieces of branded content that you saw over the past 24 hours on social media. Oh, we've got a few rebels. We've got a few rebels. All right, name the 5 pieces of branded content you last saw. Okay, I take it back. Right, guys, you get the idea. We had like 95% of people sitting down. There's a few unicorns who can remember everything perfectly. But as you get the idea anyway, right? Everyone can sit down now. Yeah, we got you down in the end. And the reason why most of you sat down was because there's just so much content today. So much content, so many media channels, so many accounts, so many brands. And as a result, we're suffering from content overload. In 2019, the average internet user is a member of 8.5 social networks. They're multi-screening on up to 5 screens per day. And over the course of a typical day, you're exposed to over 4,000 adverts. That's across all different media, so TV, digital, social, out of home, everything. Social media is becoming like the proverbial digital Times Square. You don't know where to turn for branded content, for sponsored ads, for influencers. It's just so noisy. I mean, that makes me feel a bit ill when I see it. There's just so much going on in that picture. But even though time spent on social media is at an all-time high as a result of negative press and negative PR, what we're starting to see is that people are choosing to follow brands less. So it's actually declining. It's about 20% over the last 7 years. In terms of people following brands, we've seen that decline. Engagement is on the way down and organic reach is at an all-time low. But more important than that, I think this is really indicative of the times that we live in, is that consumers are actually actively choosing to not engage with digital media. I had a quick search on Google Trends when I was writing this presentation, and I put in digital detox just to see what the search interest was like over the past few years. And you can see that in the past 5 to 6 years, it's gone absolutely stratospheric as people want to switch off from these devices that we cannot escape from. These are warning signals, right? Warning signals. So have you ever scratched yourself so much that it's started to bleed? That's a warning signal to stop. But despite this, we're still creating up to 5 petabytes of data every day on Facebook alone. What's a petabyte, I hear you ask? Well, a petabyte, 50 petabytes of data, is enough data to encompass the entire written works of mankind from the beginning of recorded history in every single language. And we're creating this every 10 days on Facebook alone. That's just on Facebook. But rather than the great literary works of Plato, of William Shakespeare, or Leo Tolstoy, what we're actually creating is stuff like this. McWhinnie's sausages. Woo! When it comes to a delicious McWhinnie sausage, Which team do you choose? Team ketchup or team mustard? Hashtag chip shop, hashtag food service, hashtag quality you can trust. Hashtags that people would never use anyway. You get the idea. I didn't want to leave the room without letting you guys know that if you want all of the latest hashtag Hoover news, the tips, competitions, then head over to Hoover UK and you can check those out because we all love Hoovers. I mean, so exciting. And this one, I love this one. This is one of those dead celebrity tweets. So this is British Gas in the UK. Morning all. A year ago today, we lost pop icon David Bowie. Time flies, don't it? But we're here until 10 p.m. if you need anything. Thanks, Paul. And you know what? I feel really sorry for Paul because Paul is living and dying by that social delivery framework, that BAU. He's seen this and he sees that he has to post 5 tweets per day or he's going to lose his job, right? But it's not just Twitter, it's Facebook as well. So this is Stade Le Pen's, and this is, don't get too excited again, this is the Stade Le Pen's competition time. Super, super exciting post here. This is Aldi and Netmums in the UK. Aldi's a really big supermarket, and it says, for the chance to win 1 out of 5 Moses baskets, simply tell us which square the Aldi logo is hiding in. Hiding? I can't see the Aldi logo anywhere. I'm not sure if anyone can help me spot it, but anyway, you get the idea. Another thing, culturally relevant content. That's a really big trend. Speaking of culturally relevant content, this is from Dulux UK. They're a paint company, and they are doing a tag the friend. You know, tag a friend, tag a mate. This is something that we see all across social media. Tag the friend with the overexcited dog. Oh, Jonathan, you and your overexcited dog. I'm going to tag you in this piece of content. Anyway, guys, you get the idea. It's boring and underwhelming, BAU. You see what I did there? Together, we can make this stop. Data will save us and ROI will come to the rescue. And to illustrate this, I've got an example from Häagen-Dazs. So we've been working with Häagen-Dazs over the past year at Social Chain. We've created some really fantastic content for Häagen-Dazs. You can see some of it on the Social Chain Instagram account. After we created that content, the head of brand marketing for EMEA gave me a call and she said, Mike, can you give us a hand with our Instagram strategy? And I said, yeah, of course. I love ice cream. I love to help. Let me just have a look at your accounts and I'll get back to you. And I had a look and you know what? Häagen-Dazs, they absolutely love BAU. They love it. They've got over 30 local market Instagram accounts all around the world, and they're all posting around 3 to 5 times per week on Instagram. And I said, I called her back and I said, listen, this has got to stop, this BAU, it's wrong. She said, no, it's great. We've got all these individual markets, we've got targets, we need to post all this stuff. And I said, okay, right, I'm going to come back with some data and explain to you why this is not the right thing to do. So this is what I did, and I basically worked it out very simply, did some maths to work this out, and I picked Häagen-Dazs Portugal, one of these accounts. This is it right here. And I said, right, look at this account. You've got 768 Instagram followers. You're posting 3 times per week on average. You get about 30 likes a post. You get 0 comments. Nobody's got anything to say about ice cream in Portugal, it seems. And the tone of voice and the creative is all over the place, as you can see from some of those assets there. To break this down into something to make some sense and understand the value of it, I worked out that about 169 people would see every post based on an average organic reach of about 25%, which is basically the top end that you're going to get on Instagram today. They get about 30 interactions per post, so over the course of a week and those 3 posts, give or take a few people for duplicates and adding a few more for the people that have engaged and the virality that you would get, I anticipate that they probably reach around 300 people every week. I then worked out that to service that content, as the previous presentation said, it takes 12 days to get a piece of content through from, copywriters, creatives, social media manager, the reporting, the account management. That's going to take, at least 5 hours, and based on the average salary of a marketing professional in Portugal, that equates to 70 euros per week. Okay, the next thing I did was just quickly work out what that equated to as a CPM, and it equated equated to 350 euros as a CPM. It's insane. I put it into context for Haagen-Dazs, and I said, let me put this into perspective for you. The Super Bowl 2019, the world's biggest advertising event. It's the most prestigious place to place your television advert, and it costs $5 million as a minimum for a 30-second slot. But you get 110 million impressions. It's still an exorbitant CPM of $45. It's super expensive. But Haagen-Dazs were willing to spend 10 times that to reach 300 people in Portugal. Makes no sense. So I said, why are you doing this? And she said to me, well, Mike, we're doing it because we want engagement. We want brand engagement. I said, stop. Engagement is not a strategy. Engagement is a tool, and it's a tool that will help facilitate real business objectives. Engagement is not an indication of success, and to illustrate this, I've got two examples. The first one is Monarch Airlines. So Monarch Airlines, really great Facebook page to get loads of engagement. This post here has got 1,000 reactions, loads of shares, loads of comments, loads of loves. People love it, and they do all of the typical BAU stuff. They've got Friday, Fly Day, Throwback Thursday, all of the things that they've got to post those 5 times per week. Let's do Motivation Monday, all of these things that we do as social media marketers blindly. Loads of engagement, fantastic, right? But 2 years ago, Monarch Airlines actually went into receivership. They went bankrupt. So all of that social media engagement didn't amount to anything when the bailiffs came calling. On the flip side, you've got a brand like Apple, who's got an iPhone here, or MacBook. I can see a few on the tables. Apple's brand value over the past few years has absolutely skyrocketed off the back of the iPad, the iPhone, even the iPod, right at the back of the start of the 2000s. As a result, their stock market valuation last year, it tipped $1 trillion. That number doesn't even look real. It looks like someone's fallen asleep on the keyboard and they've just hit zero and it's just kept going. But it is real, and it's still that figure today. And a lot of people say to me, how did Apple do that? And I love to say, well, they didn't do it with social media engagement. They've got a Twitter account, 2 million followers, 0 tweets. They've got a Facebook account. When I wrote this presentation, they had 0 posts, but they had to go and post to spoil it for me. But they've only still got 3 posts on that Facebook account organically, and those are all to do with the launch of the iPhone XS. So they've got no BAU. They've certainly got no engagement, but they've got this. Yeah? And it's not to say that they don't use social media, because they do. They use it very intelligently. So when the iPhone XS launched, they actually bought all of the ad space on Twitter. They had a promoted trend. They had sponsored videos. They had influencers. So they knew what they were doing, because they knew all of the conversation would be on Twitter at that specific moment, and they wanted to own that conversation. Their Instagram account is fantastic. If you have a look at it, they basically just use shot on iPhone as a hashtag. They source it all from UGC, so content production costs are minimal. Plus, it adds that layer of authenticity, because it's not the brand content, it's real content of people using the phone. But it's clear that there's a disconnect between engagement and real business results. Another one to illustrate here, Superdry are one of my clients in the UK. We've been working with them globally for the past 2 years. When we first started working with them, I said to them, same conversation as Haagen-Dazs, I said, guys, got to stop with this BAU. They said, what do you mean? And I said, well, let's have a look. So we use Socialbakers at Social Chain. This is just looking at their content over the course of 2017, just before we started working with them. And they were posting on Facebook an average of 50 times per month. It's like 1.5 times per day, roughly. We started working with them in September 2017, so you can see straight away where we started to decrease that. Fast forward a year, looking at 2018, we reduced it by about 40%. So they're down to 30 posts per month on average, so just under 1 a day. Still not perfect, but much better than what they were doing in 2017. In that time, their social media revenue increased by 50%. Right? So we decreased the output by 40%, yet the revenue increased by 50%. They're not linked. And actually, by focusing on bigger, better posts and focusing on more humorous and relatable content, moving away from strictly having product content on there, we were able to increase their performance. Another brand to look at in the UK, Lush Cosmetics. When I was writing this presentation, I couldn't believe it, but they actually came out and they said, yeah, we're going to stop social altogether. Not just BAU, they're going to stop the whole thing. It's crazy. People were ringing me up going, what do you think to Lush? You know, what's going on? Is this the end for branded social media? Well, of course not. Interestingly, a week before they went out with that statement, they actually posted a £4 million loss. So diversion's always a very good tactic, so kudos to the PR agency for thinking of that one. But the official statement said that we don't want to fight algorithms anymore. Okay, well, you know, some of us have been fighting algorithms for a few years now, and we've got the scars to prove it. I'm sure there's a few people in the audience that feel that way. Another thing that they said is that we don't want to pay to reach people. Freeloaders. But anyway, I used Socialbakers again, and I thought, I'm going to have a look at this and try and understand what's going on here. So I had a look at their Facebook content. Surprise, surprise, they're posting 50 times per month on Facebook. Of course, you're going to struggle with the algorithm when you're doing that, especially when about 50% of your posts are link posts. Who post link posts in 2019? Crazy. That whole thing about not wanting to pay to reach people, well, I had a look at the paid promotion detection tool on Socialbakers. What you would hope to see is that the efficiency would be in that circle in the top left of the chart, but where it is, it's incredibly inefficient. I wouldn't want to pay to reach people if my efficiency looked like that. It's one of the worst I've ever seen from a brand. Bearing in mind that they're an e-commerce brand, I thought, okay, I'll have a look on the website and I'll just see how the pixel's structured on the website because, you know, maybe their remarketing wasn't working. When I had a look on the website, they had no pixel. So how on earth they were measuring and understanding the performance of their social media marketing, I've got no idea. So how they came to that decision, no idea at all. My mum always used to say to me, she used to say, Mike, if you're not going to do something properly, just don't bother doing it at all. So in Lush's case, I say, good riddance. Okay, so we've looked at a few brands there that have, you know, not been doing things right. We've given some examples of how Apple have done quite well, but, you know, what exactly is the way forward? Well, back to the very start of this presentation, all hail the king. What is the king? It's an acronym. I know that marketing people love acronyms, so I created a new one. If you want to take a picture of what it is, this now is the moment to take that photo and put it onto Twitter. It stands for Killer Creative, Intelligent Distribution, Native Execution, and Being Goal-Oriented. I will start with Killer Creative. What is it? Well, I'm a massive fan of Seth Godin. I love the book Purple Cow. If you've not read it, I would recommend it. Fantastic book, loads of great insight. And one of the things that Seth says, he tells this story about his drive to work. And he says he's driving to work through fields, and I don't know where he works, clearly not in Dubai. And he sees these cows every day. And, you know, after a few weeks, the cows become like wallpaper. You know, you see them every day. You don't even see them. But one day he's driving to work, and he sees a purple cow. And he says, wow, it's a purple cow. He stops the car, he gets out, he puts it on Instagram stories, he takes a selfie because it's a purple cow. No one's ever seen one before. But what it actually means, you know, you need to stand out. He says, be genuine, be remarkable, be worth connecting with. And another thing he says in the book is that if it scares you, it might be something worth trying. So I took that insight and I thought, that's really, really interesting one, that. So when we first started working with Superdry, we saw this stat here which said that Gen Z want to be entertained. They, you know, not just catch up with friends on social media. So we had a specific brief to target Gen Z audiences. So we thought, okay, take that in mind. They want to be entertained. What should we do? So we did this. How's that for killer creative? We blew up a car. Not something that you can do every week, certainly. And that was one element of a much bigger campaign. And the campaign overall delivered a ROI of 231%, and it went on to win 4 awards. Really fantastic campaign, but that's a really great example of how to create some killer creative. That was a purple cow. It was something that completely stood out from the crowd when people were scrolling through social and they saw that car getting blown up. Interestingly, we got a lot of negative press from people who loved VW Beetles. We didn't realize, but VW Beetles have a very ardent community of superfans, and they weren't too pleased that we had decided to blow one up. But anyway, good example there. The next one, intelligent distribution and targeting. So we saw this stat, and it said that influencers beat direct brand interaction for Gen Z. So we thought, okay, influencers. Influencers is an interesting topic, coming under a lot of scrutiny at the moment. And when people say influencers, they automatically think of that person who stood on a beach with a bottle in hand, or staying in a really nice hotel. But influencers are not just people; they can also be entities and publishers. Social media publishers are a great source of influence. Knowing this, when we received 2 briefs, one from a supermarket in the UK called Iceland, another one came from a health supplement company called Holland & Barrett, and both of those brands, they wanted to reach students. They said, we want to reach students, and I said, okay, well, if you're going to reach students are not going to come and hang out on the supermarket's Facebook page, and they're not going to go to Holland & Barrett's Instagram account, because that's just not where they engage day to day. So what we did is we worked with the world's biggest student publisher on Facebook, on social media, Student Problems, and we created these campaigns, and they're both very similar. They're both based on memes. A lot of people say to me, like, memes? Like, the memes like work? Well, they do. These campaigns performed incredibly well. The Holland & Barrett one in particular, Holland & Barrett actually, they really, really love measurement. They're all about econometrics and understanding the impact of content performance. I got called to a meeting at their HQ, and they said, Mike, we want to talk about those memes. I thought, oh, shit, what's going to happen? Hopefully they did well. I mean, they did well from an engagement standpoint. Anyway, went down to the meeting, and they said that they'd run an econometric analysis on the campaign that we supported, and they identified that the memes had actually delivered a 6 times offline ROI. So not even online. This was actually people going into the stores, which they have all around Europe, and purchasing products. Furthermore, and this is what was really interesting, there was actually an over-index in male-focused products. So it was things like protein powders and creatine and all of these supplements, which they didn't normally sell at that time of year, but it was indicative of the audience that we'd reach through using the publishers. So we'd use that distribution to reach a new audience, engage them, and inspire them to take an action. The next example, native execution, and this doesn't just mean talking about like formats and making sure that it's vertical on Instagram stories and stuff like that. It's something else, and we'd seen this stat, which was 98% of 16 to 24-year-olds, they use messaging apps daily. So we thought, okay, messaging apps, dark social, how can we use this? So we started working with a Facebook marketing partner who allow you to operate on WhatsApp. And we basically created a WhatsApp group to support a campaign around veganism. We used an influencer to make people aware of this WhatsApp group. So she created a video and put it on her channels. We shared it on our channels. We had some paid media behind it, that native intelligent distribution. And basically we got people to come to this WhatsApp group, which basically served as, it was almost like an email newsletter. It had content every day. It had quotes. It had pictures of like recipes and things that you could make that were vegan. But most importantly, it had links to products. And the stats speak for themselves. We had 5,000 people sign up in the first 15 days. We had an average open rate of 85%. Anyone that's worked in email marketing would love to get open rates like that. We had an average average click-through rates of 24%, and it was a diversified approach. Basically, the way that it worked was that we could get people to state their interests as they signed up to this WhatsApp group, and we could actually deliver different content to different people based on what they'd said. So it was a really fantastic way of creating an engaged community. And it comes down to that big question: do you want to reach, hundreds of thousands of people and get very small volume of engagement, or do you want to create a group of, I think this ended up with about 50,000 people in it, so much smaller than their Facebook page, much smaller than their email list, but the people in this group were highly engaged, so it was incredibly valuable. And the final element is being goal orientated, and the example I've got here is we work with a pet food brand in the UK called Butchers. They create dog food, and they wanted to reach a new audience on social media, so their sales had been in decline. They were basically a pet food brand that had been around for a very long time. They had an aging audience. They wanted to get into the millennials who were all now purchasing dogs in the UK. The dog ownership had spiked, so they wanted to tap into this modern mindset. So what we created a goal-oriented campaign, which was based around 3 core phases. And the first phase was all about igniting awareness. And it was memes. We used memes. So basically, just to give a bit of context to this campaign, they'd launched a new plastic-free packaging, so it was very eco-conscious. They wanted to tap into that sentiment. So we created this meme. The dog on the left, a very unhappy dog, he'd got some food with plastic packaging. The dog on the right that's very happy, he'd had the plastic-free packaging. So this got a lot of laughs. In fact, it was one of their most engaged posts on their Facebook page ever. But most importantly, we were able to scrape all of the data of the people that had engaged with that advert, and we were able to remarket to them. And what we did, we remarketed to them with this Instagram story, which told you a little bit more about why they were going plastic-free, the impact it would have, but also started to introduce the product and where you could buy it from. Then, in the final phase, we created this post here, which was basically a voucher download. So we wanted to drive people towards an action. We had a goal of making people aware of the new plastic-free packaging. We wanted to engage them, but we wanted them to buy it. And this final phase, I think it had a redemption rate of around 30%, which again was blew all of their other marketing channels out of the water. They typically use direct mail for vouchers, and they would get redemption rates of 5 to 7%. So it was a really great way of showing how, by stating a goal at the very start and creating a campaign to reach that, you can deliver really, really impressive results. So, I've been speaking for a while now. You're probably all sick of me. What's the takeout? So, just to break it down to you, BAU leads to boring and underwhelming content. So we just need to stop. You don't need to post 10 times per week on Facebook. You need to work out what is right for your brand or business. Brands need to slow down. Frequency has no impact in an algorithmic world and a post-organic world. Think purple cow if you're creative. Young people, they crave entertainment. They just want to go onto social media to be entertained. They want to laugh. They want to see funny videos that they can share with their friends. Be smart with your distribution and targeting. Engaged reach is key. So just reaching 1 million people doesn't mean anything if it's not engaged reach, but engaged reach is something you can deliver through influencers and publishers. Young people are not engaging with brands directly anymore. We've seen it's on the decline. They want to engage with real people, with influencers and publishers. Native execution doesn't just mean from a creative standpoint, it means behavior. So, if people are natively behaving in a certain way, then try and tap into that behavior whatever way you can, but ultimately be purposeful in your approach. Thank you so much, guys, for listening.